Okay, so we're going through chapter 4, and you can see I'm over here in the center. Basically, on the left here is the final product, and this is what we're going to start with on the right. So our first job here, I'm going to hide the end file in the back, and I'm going to focus on this beach file. So we're going to bring the beach file into this file over here, and I'm going to place this by choosing background first, just to get us started. And now there's two ways to bring in a file from another file. So I can drag this here. I'll do this once like this. I'll drag this over. Now the picture looks like it's going away, but it's really not. It's going to go over here, and I let go on this right side. Boom, it's actually in there. You can see it behind the pineapple, and you can see it right over here. Okay, now I'm going to undo this, Command 0 or Control 0 on the PC. And I can also do it this way. I can just drag layer 1, even though it's on the other side of the screen. This layer 1 belongs here, and I'll just drag this. So notice how that it is semi-transparent. I'll drag it into the pineapple area, and now it's back there as well. And we'll leave it like that. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to switch my windows around a little bit. I'm going to hide this stuff over here. We don't need this. So we're going to change our workspace around just a little bit. So right now we're currently in 2-up vertical, and I'm going to switch to consolidate to all tabs. And there's pineapple in front. I'm going to turn pineapple off for just a moment and put my beach layer here, just kind of center it up. And that looks pretty good right there. I'm also going to relabel this, so I'll double click and go beach. Nice. Okay. Now on this layer here, we're going to add, well actually you know what we're going to do first. I'll leave it like this actually. We are going to add a stroke style. Now this is going to be kind of difficult to see at first, but you'll see the result of this. We're going to add basically just kind of a stripe along the edge or along the perimeter of this image. So I'm going to go here to layer styles. It says FX down there, but it really is layer styles. And I'm going to go to stroke and set up the size here at 5 pixels. And it's going to be set to inside, and the color is going to be set to white. So I'll just drag this over here, click OK. And now you might not be able to see this right now, the stroke. You might be able to see it if I change this to outside, but it will become more visible once we move ahead. So I'll click OK, and you can see now that there's a stroke attached to this layer. Now we can turn the effect on and off, which is cool, and you'll see more of this stuff later. Let's turn on the pineapple layer. Now of course we want to put the beach actually in front of the pineapple, so I'm going to restack this. So I'll click beach and drag it up. I could have just as easily dragged pineapple down, and there we are. Let's turn some other things on. We've got a flower layer, and we've got a postage layer. And the first thing we're going to do here is take the postage layer and drop this down to 25%. Or roughly thereabouts. We'll call it 24. That's fine. So it got kind of weaker. That's okay. And we're going to then turn off this beach layer and look at the pineapple layer. So pineapple layer selected. And I'm going to, oh, I forgot one thing. Take that beach layer, I'm sorry, the postage layer, and change the blend modes from normal to multiply. Now watch what happens over on that postage stamp. It should have gotten a little bit thicker. Okay, let's see how that goes. In the meantime, let's go down here to the pineapple, and we're going to duplicate this layer. There's a couple of ways of duplicating a layer. I could right click. Now on the Mac, I'm going to control click because I don't have a mouse here, I've got a trackpad. So I will right click on this, and I could duplicate the layer. Now it's going to ask me what I want to call this, and it offers up pineapple copy. That's fine. I could do it that way, or I could undo this, and I could do it the other way. Let's have pineapple selected and hit the keyboard shortcut, which is Command J. There's my duplicate now. Same thing, same name. Now let's go up here to the top and give this a new blend mode, and watch what happens to the pineapple over here. We're going to change the blend mode from normal to overlay, and here we go. Watch your pineapple. Boom. It's more contrasty, and the colors are a bit more intense, which is cool. Now let's turn on the beach layer and also select the beach layer. And the first thing I'm going to do is transform. So let's go to the edit menu and go to our friend free transform, which is Command T, Control T on the PC. And I'm going to grab this lower right corner here and scale this up. Now it's not proportional unless I also hold down the shift key. Now keep your eye up in the options bar where the height and width are, and I'm going to drop this to about 50%. Right about there. And now I'm not going to click the check mark yet. I'm going to rotate this. So watch the cursor here, and I'm going to rotate counterclockwise a bit. Or I'm sorry, is it clockwise? Looks like it's clockwise is what my notes say. So I'll set, please watch up in the options bar again. There's a rotational item there, about 15 degrees. So that's pretty good right there. Nice. Okay, so let's finish this up by going and turning on the checkbox. That finishes our rotation and scaling. And we're going to create a new layer. So actually, I think we're going to move this flower layer up and out just a little bit. That's nicer. Let's create a new layer. Let's click on the background and then create a new layer down here. And we're going to relabel this and call it clouds. And we're going to use a filter. Now the filter is the render filter, and we're going to erase some clouds. But the clouds filter here is based on what are the colors in our color chips. So I'm going to put something in here. I'm going to go use some RGB values, and they are 48, 138, and 174. And click OK. Now we've got a nice blue going on there. In fact, I'm going to turn these layers off so you can see what's going on here. On the cloud, new cloud layer, filter menu, render, clouds. Pretty nice. Now what's neat about the way the filters work is there's a menu up here. Now it says clouds, but really what happens is this is the last item used. So it could be any filter that I've just used. So what I can do is I can hit Command F, obviously Control F on the PC, and I can just recalculate. Because what happens is this isn't just a picture of clouds, this is actually math going on here. So basically when we hit this, it's just recalculating. Command F, Command F, Command F, until we get something we like. Maybe there's some pattern you might be looking for. Just kind of a cloudy thing going on. And excuse me, I'll go with that. And I'll turn these guys back on. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, next on our list is we're going to click on the pineapple, and we're going to bring in another flower file, but we're going to do it a different way this time. So I'm at the lower right hand corner here, and I'm going to expose my desktop and open up the folder that has our files in it, and I'm going to take this flower number 2 and just drag it into our document. Let's try that again. Clicking on flower number 2, and there we go. Now we'll drag it into the document. This is actually called placing. Kind of a slightly different procedure than what we did before when we brought the beach picture in here. And it's waiting for us to finish the procedure here. So I'm going to push this down and toward the left there. And then to complete the process, I would hit the check mark or just hit enter. I'll just click on that right now. And I'm going to open up our window again. Okay, looking good so far. Let's turn on the Hawaii layer. Now this is not a type layer, this is actually a pixel-based layer. It's been converted. It's called rasterization, to convert from a vector-based layer to pixels. And now we're going to build some other type here. Now before we go any further, let's go to the type tool. And actually there's some things already set up for us, and that's the font is called Birch. The size is 36 pixels. The anti-aliasing is set to crisp. And we're also going to set up some things over here. And this menu right here that says 250 is our tracking. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. we've got the faux bold turned on and all caps turned on. So what I want to do down here is type in here Island Paradise, Paradise, and hit enter. And that looks pretty good. It's not the right color I want. I want kind of a greenish color here. So I'm going to pull this up and move into the green zone and look for a color that's going to be decently contrast, even though we're going to add some effects to it in a bit. I like that. So we'll click OK, and I'm going to get the move tool just to kind of align this up a little bit more with the letters there. It looks like the S is kind of near that edge, but it's a little bit far away here. I'm going to use my arrow keys and dial that in a little bit more. That looks about right. Okay, and oh, I mentioned I was going to show you what the tracking does. So right now this is set to 250. Let's say that I reduce this down to 0. Okay, and you can see what happens. It tightens up the letter spaces for all the letter spaces between all the letters on this layer. That's what tracking does. If I was interested in changing the spacing on just, let's go get the type tool. I could change the spacing just between S and E there, and for that I would use this menu over here. So let's say that I wanted to space this out to 200. It just spaces it out like that. So basically this one here on the left is about, it's called kerning, and that works between two letter forms, and then this one over here is tracking, and this works on the entire layer. Now I'm going to reset this one back to 0 or 0. There we go. And I'm also going to actually hit enter, because now that I'm going to work on the entire layer, I really don't need to have it activated. I can just type in 250 and space it out. There we go. And now we're back to where we should be. And right now we're going to change the color of Hawaii. So for this, let's choose the Hawaii layer, and I'm going to put some marching ants on this. The best way to do that is, well, there are a couple of ways. My favorite way is just hitting the command key, like this one. Remember, it's the control key on the PC, and just hit the layer thumbnail. Boom, marching ants. Okay. The other method is very similar. It's hitting the control key and clicking on that same layer thumbnail, and then it brings up a pop-up menu. Well, actually, it's a contextual menu, and then we can go to select pixels. Either way gets you there. Okay. Now what we're going to do is use the gradient tool. And most of this is actually pretty much set up for us. All we've got to do is just change the color. We want to use kind of an orangey color as well as white. So I'm going to change this down into this range and choose a rather burnt orange, which is nice. And then I'm going to use the gradient tool. Now, when you use the gradient tool, you should set up a few things here. This pop-up menu shows you several things. This one shows you foreground to background color chip, foreground to transparent, black to white, and then some other preset colors that you can use. We just want to use this one. And we also want to, sorry, shouldn't have clicked on that. We want to use linear. Here, this is a linear gradient. This one is a radial gradient, and there's some other ones, angle gradient, reflected gradient. Chances are nearly 100% of the time you're going to use this one or the second one, linear or radial. Okay, so now we're just going to go over here and start at the bottom of the letter forms and just click and drag up. Now notice how loosey-goosey I can move this rubber band, but if I hold down the shift key, it will constrain it to go up and down, or I can move at 45-degree angles. But I just want to go up and down here, and I'll let go of the cursor, and there's my gradient. That looks pretty good. I'll deselect the marching ants with Command D. Nice. Okay, now I want to apply some styling to this type layer. So I'll go back to my Island Paradise, and we're going to add a drop shadow. Now the drop shadows live down here in the effects. Now it says FX down there, but you'll notice the tooltip there says add a layer style, and that's what we're doing, is adding layer styles. So we click on the pop-up, and we want this one at the bottom that says drop shadow. And you can see already we're getting some drop shadow on this item down here. You get some separation from the background, which is nice. Actually, I can turn it off. I'll do this a couple times so you can see the difference. That's without the drop shadow. That's with it. Okay, now we're just going to change the settings. So multiply in 75 is pretty standard for a lot of cases. And we're going to leave it at 78. Let's see, the distance is 5. We're going to change the spread. Now watch how big the shadow gets. It's not a huge change, but it's a pretty big change. I'll type in 30, and the shadow gets a little bit more dense. And what comes after this? 10 pixels. So we're going to change the distance. Actually, the distance is over there. The size actually affects how soft the shadow is. So I'm going to crank this up to about 10. Oops, that's a little bit much. A little hard to do with the trackpad here, in which case I'm going to just type it in, 10. And I just wanted to talk briefly about the angle. So watch the shadow. I'm going to take this to about 9 o'clock. Now the shadow is actually much more pointing at 3 o'clock, if you catch how that works. So basically this is where the light source comes in. So we're going to leave this at 75, I believe. I'm sorry, 78. Nice. And we will click OK. And we're going to close this character panel. So notice what's happening here. Just like we did before, we made a stroke for the beach layer. We just applied a drop shadow for this island paradise. We can duplicate this. And I'm going to duplicate this to the Hawaii layer. So this is very simple. I'm going to hold down the Option key. This is the Alt key for the PC people. And I'm going to drag these letters FX from the Island Paradise layer up to Hawaii. Here's how it goes. Option, click, drag, just like this. And boom, there we go. Now we've got the same drop shadow going on there. Pretty nice. Now what we're going to do is add a little something onto Hawaii. So with Hawaii selected, if I double click the words drop shadow, that takes us back to this control panel. And now if I click on the checkbox for stroke, that turns on the stroke, but it doesn't change the controls over here. If I want to change the controls panels over here, I've got to actually click on the words over here. So there's the stroke. Okay, now what we're going to do is we'll do 4 points. I'll type that in there. 4 points on the outside and leave it to normal and 100% opacity. But we do want to change the color. So I want something that's going to work with this greenery here. So I'll go down to green, and actually I like that right there. It kind of comes close to what's going on there with Island Paradise, and that looks pretty cool. So we'll click OK there, and click OK there. Okay, now we're going to add a couple of effects on the flower, and then we'll do flower 2 as well. So let's do this. Let's go to the flower layer, which is this one here. And we're going to add a drop shadow, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. So similar to what we did before. Here we go, drop shadow. And we're going to change the settings here. So 60% on the opacity. And 13 pixels on the distance. I'm just going to type this in here, 13. And of course, I hope everybody knows that if you hit the tab key, you can go from one thing to the next. The spread is 9%, and the size will remain at 5%, or 5 pixels. And like we did before with I believe it was the stroke on the Hawaii layer, this time we're just going to add a satin layer. So I'll turn it on by hitting satin right there, and you can see what's happening there. But we'll also change the control. So I'll click on the word satin, nice, and make a few adjustments here. So multiply is the blend mode we want. And we want to choose a color here, kind of a fuchsia color, which is kind of like that, kind of a pinky color. And I'll click OK. And we'll set the opacity, if I'm not mistaken, to 20%. Good. We'll leave the angle here at 19, and 22 and 14 for the distance and size. So there's 22, and 14 will remain the same, and now we can click OK. Okay, so I told you can turn these things off individually. Of course, if you just turn off the effects, that will turn both of them off at the same time. So that's cool. Let's go to flower 2, which is down here. Now this one we're going to add an adjustment layer. So I'm going to go down here. Actually, you can go here or here. Hue and saturation is our friend. And we're going to just change these three sliders here. So this one's going to be set to 43. And this one is going to be set to 19. And we're going to leave the lightness at 0 and close that up. Now what you can see here is that our effect has a layer mask, and the layer mask actually means here that the effect is taking place on every pixel. And what you should know is that adjustment layers like this work on all of the layers that are down beneath of it. Okay, so we've got the flower 2, pineapple, pineapple copy, clouds, and background. So that's why there's kind of a stronger color going on there. But we only want it to be applied to flower 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to group these two layers into what's called a clipping mask. So here's how this works. I'm going to hold down the Option key. You can see what that key looks like here on the Mac. It's obviously the Alt key on the Windows machine. And I'm going to move my cursor around here. You can see how it's changing. We want this one right over here, this arrow with the square. And it's pointing at the line between the two layers. And I'm going to click, and that's going to group them together. Here's how it goes. 3, 2, 1, click, boom. And now what's going on here is that we've got an arrow pointing down. This whole effect has sort of been indented a bit. But what it means is that this hue and saturation adjustment layer now belongs to flower and will only affect flower. And that's all there is to that. Okay, a couple last things here. We're going to change the postage. We're just going to move it around just a bit with the move tool. I'm going to move it down and kind of over this way. That's cool. And I believe that's, oh, we've got one more thing to do. Let's, so make sure the postage layer is selected and create a new layer on top of this. And we're going to call this border. B-O-R-D-E-R. Now, to make our border, we're going to select the entire document. So we'll go to the Select menu and go to All, Get to Know and Love, Command A or Control A. So that puts marching ants around the whole thing. We're going to modify our selection here by going to the Select menu and going down to Modify. And the only thing available to us is border. Okay, and it's going to ask us, what size do you want this? Well, we want it to be 10 pixels. I think it starts off usually in 4 pixels by default, but I've been playing around with this, so that's why it's 10. Okay, and I'll click OK. And look what happens. Your border now basically has 4 pixels inside the document, I'm sorry, 5 pixels inside the document and 5 pixels out. Okay, all we've got to do is fill this thing with white. So now white is our background color chip, so all I'm going to do is hit Command backspace, or Command delete is what it does on the Mac, Control backspace on the PC. And I've just filled that with white. I'm going to deselect my marching ants, Command D, and that's it. Now there's one other procedure that's in the book that you might want to consider in a lot of other cases, and that is to flatten the entire project into one layer. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like, but I do not want you doing this for my projects for my class. Okay, but I still want to show you what this looks like. So up here to the flyout menu, remember every tabbed panel here has a flyout menu, so we're in the layers panel here. And I click on this over here. And down around here you've got things like merge down, merge visible, and flatten image. Takes all the layers, puts it all into one layer. Now this is great if you want to show clients your final work, or if you just want to get just a quick sign off. For my class, that doesn't help me because that doesn't show me what you're thinking about. Okay, if I undo this, Command Z, and I see all of these layers, this helps me. It helps me know that you're getting this, that you understand that, and that you're figuring out how the layers work. Okay, when I see your layers, I see how you think, and that's important for the class. There's only one project way down the road where we flatten everything, and that's for a different purpose. Okay, so whenever you turn stuff in for me, make sure I see all of your layers. And that's it for Chapter 4.